Okay, you can start.
All right. Hi, everybody. Welcome to the General Plan Advisory Committee meeting tonight. I am going to chair for a few minutes until Grant gets on. He's having a little bit of Wi-Fi issue. So I think we'll move ahead and have John go ahead with the invocation and pledge of allegiance. If he's available, ready?
Okay, I'm going to do invocation tonight.
Hi, John.
Our Father in heaven, we come before thee as a committee in North Ogden City this night. First of all, Father in heaven, we're thankful for the opportunity in this free land to be able to meet and have these discussions, that those in leadership are interested in our input, our thoughts, and that we as a community can move forward to make this the kind of place we want to live in and want future people to enjoy. We ask you to help us this night in our discussion, that they may be meaningful and cordial, and that we may understand all that's presented, and help us any decisions we make may be for the betterment of this city. Again, we're thankful for this opportunity and do so in the name of Jesus Christ. Amen. Okay, do we have a flag? Okay, if we can repeat the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, thank you for that, John. Let's move on to our consent agenda then. Consideration to approve the, okay. Consideration to approve the February 24th, 2021 General Plan Advisory Committee minutes. Did we all have a chance to go over them? Does anybody have any changes or anything? I cannot see if hands are raised.
There's no hands raised.
Anybody unmute? Okay, there, I can see you all now. I guess we need someone to approve those. Or to motion to approve them.
Jeff, this is Julie.
Hi, Julie.
Hi. I propose a motion that we pass the minutes for approval of the February 24th, 2021 General Plan Advisory Committee minutes.
Okay, we need a second. Come on, guys.
I'll second that.
Thank you. So do we have anybody, do we all approve?
So just ask for all approved.
All approved. I'm waiting to see if everybody's gonna take their things off. We all approve?
Yes.
Aye.
Yes, okay. So I'm looking at this though, Lynn, and I'm thinking right now, do I just have Julie and Eric as committee members?
You've also got Ryan and John. Here comes Grant.
Okay, there's John coming. I was glancing and I'm thinking, I just want to make sure that we've got enough committee members here.
Boy, I love tech.
Okay. Hi, Grant.
Hello,
It's great to have you.
John and Rob and Ryan and Alan, Eric.
Aye.
Hey,
So, Grant, we have just gone through the consent agenda and we are now ready for the agenda.
oh,
If you would
okay.
like to go ahead and take over.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much. I love technology, but We all have our stories. Have we had public comments yet?
We don't have any public with us, except for, looks like a Dallin Barker. And he doesn't have his hand raised, so I think we're good.
Okay, very good. Let's move to the committee presentations. Julie, Meg, and Stephanie, we're all set for presentations, and love to hear from them. Why don't we start with Julie? Is Julie on board? I see her. Hi, Julie.
Start with me? Okay. Okay. So at the last meeting, I was, I volunteered to talk about the R110 zone, just so we could kind of maybe get a better understanding of what each of the zones are and what's involved in them and stuff like that. So I started doing my research, and of course I went to where Article B in 11.7, which is single family residential zones, and it gives you R18, R18A, R18AG, and then the R110. And as I got looking through that, it has the basic information that we need, like the lot sizes, setbacks, all of that good stuff. But that was, about really all it had in it. It had some information. It had some information about animals or fowl in the R1AG zone. But that was about, kind of like what is permitted use.
Am I the only one? But it seems like Julie, you're coming and going. Am I the only one that's having trouble hearing her?
Sometimes this computer does, so I don't know. But anyway, so it had the basic information that you needed if you were in an R110, so you could understand what you could build on lots and what you could do on those lots. But I kind of wondered if there was other information throughout the city code that could kind of maybe expand on that a little bit. So I started with the animals because it just says that you can only have animals in the R18AG. And so as I looked into this, I actually found out information for animals and fowl, and here's what I found out. It says for dogs and cats, if you have a conditional use permit for a kennel, then you can have more than 2 dogs or cats. If not, you can only have 2 dogs or cats. So you can either have 2 dogs, 2 cats, or a dog and a cat within the R110 zone. And then I found it very interesting. It also says you can have as many fish as you want. When it comes to gerbils, hamsters, guinea pigs, or rabbits, you can have no more than 4. Non-poisonous snakes that are less than 3 feet, no more than 2. You can have turtles less than 1 foot. There's no limit on those. So you can have as many turtles as you want, as long as they're less than 1 foot. Non-poisonous lizards less than 1 foot, no more than 2. Parrots, you can have no more than 2. Budgies and parakeets, there's no limit. So I found that kind of interesting because I had relatives who raise budgies, and I call them budgies, I'm sorry, budgies and parakeets, and they had a lot of them. So I found that very interesting. But one of the things I found very interesting is that you can also have hens or chickens in the R110. So if you have less than 0.49 of an acre, you can have 10 hens. If you have a half acre to an acre, you can have 15 hens. And then if you have 1 to 5 acres, you can have 15 chickens per acre. So what was interesting though, in the R18 ag zone, under the general purpose or general intent, it does not tell you actually how many chickens you have. You have to go to this section, which is section 1110-7, to be able to find out if you can have chickens on your property. And then I just kind of started looking through all of the different areas, and I found standards for accessory buildings in residential zones. And, we've heard a lot of talk about this in the Planning Commission, and they made a lot of changes. But metal accessory buildings 200 square feet or less are allowed in all residential zones. So in R110, you can have a metal accessory building as long as it's less than 200 square feet. So I thought that was kind of interesting. And then as I was reading through, in the section 11-10-15, it had public utility substations. And this just kind of caught my eye, so I'm just going to share it with you. For public utility substations, excuse me, I've been reading to kids all day, so my throat is just about done. It says each public utility substation in a residential zone shall be located on a lot not less than 2,000 square feet in an area, which I thought was kind of interesting. Landscaping, the landscaping plan will demonstrate appropriate bufferings from adjoining use. So I thought that was kind of interesting. Then I noticed family swimming pools, and I thought, well, I don't have one, but it would be interesting to know what it needs. It says in single family residential zones, a family swimming pool shall be permitted in the rear yard of a dwelling and on corner lots in the corner side yard as an accessory use. So in R110, you can have a swimming pool. Then what caught my eye was portable storage containers, which is in 11-10-33. It says a storage container is not allowed in any residential zone or for more than 14 days, except as a temporary use associated with like construction, renovation, or moving. And they give you a lot of information on this, which I thought was interesting. It says the storage container shall be located on a concrete or asphalt surface. So you have to make sure that you do that. It says a portable storage container shall not be used as a dwelling or for camping, cooking, or recreation purposes, and may not be connected to plumbing or electricity. And also it says that portable storage containers should be kept in good repair. And I thought it was interesting because it tells us, you know, we can't have it on there for more than 14 days. Then you have to move it, and I guess you can bring it back. Not sure on all the little details, but this one caught my eye because it's not going to be there but that long to really develop weeds around it. It's on asphalt. And sometimes when you pick up those units, they are pretty dinged up anyway. So I thought that was kind of an interesting one. You also can't put portable storage containers on vacant parcels of real estate. So if you own a lot in an R110 zone, then you can't just put a storage container on there. Then I found flag lots in 11-10-30, and they are not allowed in any of our zones in the city. So you can't do that. Of course, we've been talking about accessory dwelling units the last little while, and it says they meet ordinance requirements, may be allowed in an R110. No accessory dwelling unit may be allowed in any multiple family dwellings. And it says the number of dwelling units is a maximum of one accessory dwelling in the R110. I also got to section 11-10-14. I kind of had fun with this. It says private park, playground, or recreational area. And what I discovered is I didn't know you could have a private playground, but you can in the city. It's kind of cool. It says in all residential zones, a private park, playground, or recreational area with or without a swimming pool shall meet the following recommendations. Of course, they've got to be bathrooms. That makes sense. The hours of operation are just like our parks. Setbacks, all facilities, equipment, and buildings shall be set back no less than 20 feet from the property line and shall be located no less than 50 feet from any main building on an adjoining lot. The lot size, it says the minimum size of the lot or site used for such recreational or other purposes shall be 1 acre. Okay. And then it talks about lighting and making sure that, you know, you light accordingly, that it gives the suitable screening. So then that got me thinking about lighting, and I found a section in 11-10-13 in the city code called exterior lighting. It says no spotlight or floodlight shall be installed in any way which will permit the direct rays of such light to penetrate any residential zone or onto any property used for residential purposes. So if you have a really big light out back and you light up your whole neighborhood, you might be getting a visit from the zoning officer. So, and then I found the last one I'm going to talk to you about. I don't know why this, but in 1118, it talks about television, satellite, and dishes. It says building permits are required for television, satellite antennas, or dish antennas, and should comply with the regulations outlined in this chapter, which I didn't know about. It says any television, so then the location of them in 1118.3 says they have to be located as such setbacks. All television satellite antennas shall have setbacks of at least 5 feet of freestanding. The setback shall be measured from the property line to the nearest point of the antenna. The distance for rotating dish antennas shall be measured from the nearest point of the antenna in its closest rotational configuration. It says residential zones. In any residential zone, television satellite antennas shall only be located in the rear yard of any lot. If a usable satellite signal cannot be obtained from such a rear yard, then the antenna has to be located on the roof or the side yard, except side yards facing the street on a corner lot. And then you need to make sure that your television satellite dish does not impede anybody's visual impact and stuff. And then when it comes to antenna, it says no more than one television satellite antenna or dish is allowed per residential lot. And the size of the antenna or dish shall exceed 12 foot, shall not exceed 12 foot in diameter in a residential zone. So I found that interesting that while they have the one section that gives you the lot size and all of that kind of stuff, there is a lot of other stuff that is in other places. So that's kind of what I found about an R110, 10,000 square foot lots, your typical setbacks. Those are all in place and they're good. But there are other parts that require you to go to other sections of the city code to make sure that you're in compliance. So there you go. R110 for you. I'm done.
Thanks, Julie. Do we have any questions of clarification? We'll have a little more discussion after all the reports are in, but does anyone have any items they'd like clarified from Julie's report? Steph?
I just wanted to add to that. That was really awesome. And she went way into more depth and like, that's great on her zone. But Rob Scott sent me something that I think is really helpful as we move forward on our discussion of zoning and stuff to help us understand what the zone Julie just told us about. The R110 zone, gross dwelling units per acre is 4.4. Net dwelling units per acre is 3.3 in an R110 zone.
Mm-hmm.
So I just wanted to add that, and Lynn put that up on the, I think that I really appreciate Rob sending that to us, because as we get an idea of what each of these zones are, it will help us to break down our map.
And I think that was the hardest part to find. I couldn't find where that was specifically like this. So I appreciate Rob sending that to us.
Super. Okay, Julie, I only had one question. Does that mean that you can't have a flag and spotlight the flag?
Well, that's a good question.
Yeah.
No,
We might have to.
we do have other standards that relate to flags and flag poles and all those kinds of things. I would like to maybe clarify one thing relative to this table. It says gross and net. And the gross means that you divide the number of dwelling units by the number of acres, and that's the total acreage. Net acreage, the way planners generally figure that out is they subtract out the streets. So generally the rule of thumb is that you discount it by 25%. Now that's going to vary some, but that's the general rule of thumb. That's where the numbers that were identified come up with the net densities.
Super. Thanks for that clarification, Rob. Okay, if there are no further questions of clarification for Julie, let's move on to Meg. Are you ready?
Yes. I mean, I'm a little nervous to follow Julie.
You certainly did a good job, no doubt about it.
No doubt about Julie does a good job on everything she touches. So that's why I don't want to follow Julie. But I will tell you what I found on my zones. And for the most part, excuse me while I get to my notes. Obviously, the R1s are all kind of grouped together. So with RE20, I looked around, and I don't know if we can pull up the zoning map to look up RE20 and show that, but that seems to be kind of the dying breed, if you will, of what's going on in North Ogden. And a big group of RE20 can be found just off of Pleasant View Drive. If you look across there in those neighborhoods, I thought that the RE20 looked very similar to the R18 zones. As you know, how Julie broke down the animals. And I thought initially going into this that things like the R1s would have lower allotments for animals and things like that for agriculture, but it's actually pretty similar to the RE20s. So there's not very much different. Says the purpose of RE20 zone classification is to provide a regulated area for single family residential and agricultural uses. The minimum lot requirement is 20,000 square feet and 43,000 on corner lots. So I don't know if Rob could clarify for me when I was looking through these numbers. I didn't understand how big a home could be on an R18 versus an RE20, if there's a large difference in the size of the homes. Do I wait for the answer or do I keep going? I don't know.
I'm happy to share some thoughts about that. So the ordinance, the way that it's, when you couple the standards for the individual zones, which the R1 zones, R18 means minimum 8,000 square feet. And then we have, coupled with that, we have setbacks. And so that gives you the buildable area that would be allowed for a particular dwelling. So the city does not have any standards that says that you have to have a minimum size building in any of our zones, as far as that goes. We limit the numbers sometimes, but as far as saying that your home has to be 1,000 square feet or something like that, there are no standards like that.
Rob, that's not true for the maximum though, is it, in terms of number of stories and size and so on and so forth?
Correct. So we do have maximums, and based on those densities, then you would identify the amount of the space that could be occupied by the home and the height and so forth.
I'm sure that was designed to keep Rulon Jeffs and that crew out of North Ogden. So thank you for that safeguard.
Those are pretty standard ways of approaching Euclidean zoning.
And I found that when I looked up Ogden Valleys, because I've always liked the planning for Ogden Valley, obviously, because it's pretty fast and loose and they try to keep it pretty open. So that was what led me to the question I had about RE20s versus many of the others, the maximum homes. So I saw that you have to have a fairly large lot for RE20s and not necessarily the case for the R18s. And I think, do I have the R15 on here? So I wondered, yeah, so if you look at R15 zoning classification, it's to provide a regulated area for single family residential, uses in a small lot configuration to provide flexibility and infill. So I was looking through things and it looks like R15 is becoming a more popular zone, or has always been. And I wondered if that's obviously because you can have a smaller lot with, when I looked at it, still a fairly large home. The other thing I learned just from looking into this, I don't understand a lot of things. And I'm grateful for Google. So when I looked at the comparison of the lots, the R15 and the RE20 and the R-1-8, there didn't look to be a whole lot of differences except for the fact of the size of the property that you had to have. You can have, obviously, the accessory dwellings on RE20, and looks like they can be bigger, because you've got a bigger lot. So is that the case with the way zoning is going? Are people leaving behind the RE20 and going more towards the R15 or the R18?
Rob, do you have an answer for that?
Well, it's really up to individual communities to make those kinds of determinations. So many places where they want to have a more rural feel to them, they actually don't have the variety of lots that North Ogden does. They may have, for example, in the county and what have you, but there's a lot of rural cities that have minimum acreage of like 1 acre or even a ½ acre lots, that type of thing. So RE20 is, in many ways, it's a transition zone. It's there to be utilized, obviously, for the agricultural purposes that we're all accustomed to seeing around the community and what have you. But then we also see that as projects come along and properties are rezoned, and we end up with these other varying lot sizes. So,
and I thought the case in point for that was if you go over to Loman View, and there was, a bunch of hoopla over rezoning that land there, which I think is that an R1 like hybrid? I can't remember what the hybrid of that along Loman View.
The most recent one was they rezoned it to R1-12.5.
Okay. And from what I saw, and this could be a mistake, that's what I'm not sure about, and I didn't have time to go back and look, but the R1-12.5 requires the largest lots of 12,500. Is that incorrect?
Well, for interior lots, we have you have to add a little bit extra for corner lots, but
okay,
for the R1-12.5, that's correct.
Okay, so, and then the R18 AG allows for the smallest lots at 8,000 square feet.
Right, R18, R18A, and R18 AG, they all have the same standard, so 8,000 square foot minimum.
The biggest thing I'll just hurry and wrap up with this. The biggest thing I walked away with reading through these things was looking at the lot size versus how large of the house. Because right now I feel that North Ogden is following this idea of a single family homes, but we're putting them on smaller lots to kind of also fit that medium density. And I found that to kind of be the direction in which we're going, smaller lots with bigger homes. So bye-bye RE20.
Okay. Thanks so much, Meg. You had some really good insights. I appreciate you sharing those. Steph, I think you're up next. Does anyone have any questions of clarification for Meg or Rob before we move to Steph?
Meg, it's Julie. So we are in an RE20 zone. Just so you know, we're one of the last hangers on.
Same with my neighborhood is an RE20 as well.
Okay.
Knock that stuff down then and let's put an apartment.
So Grant, one thing that you might want to couple the idea by this variety of zones to our general plan, because our general plan, one of the things that it talks about is providing for a variety of housing types. And along with the housing types, many times those correlate to the size of lots. Not always, but many times they do. Mm-hmm. And as a part of the goals and strategies that we have for housing, it relates to providing a variety so that we're just not a one size fits all for the entire community.
Great. Well, we certainly have a wide variety right now. So, and I think the committee's probably favorable toward incorporating some of that in the, in the master plan, because bottom line, we want to be able to give the city council some strength in the positions that they take going forward. And this will probably strengthen, if we vested in particular, would strengthen their position, wouldn't it?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay, very good. Okay, Steph.
All right. I have got the R2, R3, and R4 zones. And honestly, as I looked through these, they are very, very similar and could almost combine. There's not a huge, I mean, there's the between, once you go from the R2 to the R4, there is some difference, but on our zoning map, we've only got a small amount that's R3. These three zones are where we start getting into multifamily housing, kind of the transition between the single family homes into more of the apartment style, the townhome zones, things like that. So we've got the R2, which is first, which would be more like duplexes. And I just hid my other paper. This is 8,000 square feet per lot for a single family, or 12,000 for two family. And one thing that I wanted to bring up on the R3 is this last planning commission meeting, there was a request from a developer wanting to go from an RE20 to an R3. It's a huge jump. But I would like to say, I think it's something that we should all look at, especially as we're going to be looking at our moderate income housing. We've got to be working on that as well down the road. This proposal, or it was asked to be, the rezone was asked to be off of Pleasant View Drive. And I don't know that it's the right time for it, but I have to be honest with you. I think it was something that fit into our city really well. Mm-hmm. They had a very different look to them. They didn't look, you didn't look at them and they looked all the same, like oh, those are apartments. So I think it's something that we should look at as we move forward and are looking at zoning and stuff. It was also asking to be rezoned right next to the old Public Works building. So it was closer to downtown, where we had kind of discussed possible, you know, that kind of zoning in there. I know that it's near some people that I really love that live right there, and they had concerns about it, which I get and I understand. But I think that, you know, as the city progresses, I think those kinds of developments in those smaller fills fit really well closer to our downtown area. It would have been across the street from Bicentennial Park and extended 300. So anyway, that being said, that was one of the only zones that I could find, or one of the that would be R3. And I jumped because in my head I've kind of combined these three zones. Sorry. That's a little bit of a higher density from the R2, which would be more duplexes. I think that's the highest that you would see. It does have 7 units per acre for an R2 zone. And some of those, there's just not a lot of that zoning. There's a lot of R4, which is trying to think. I couldn't even find an R. Rob, do you know where there is an R2? I could not find one, so I'm just.
There's actually quite a bit of R2 just south of the city building.
Okay, yes, the
kind of south and east.
Those are, I'm trying to think of what they look like in my head. Sorry, guys. I
can't remember the name of them.
Everyone see on the zoning map?
The senior patio homes.
Okay, yes. And they're around the church behind by Green Acres Elementary? Is that, no, they're more by
No, right behind the senior center.
It's Legacy.
Legacy.
Yeah,
Thank you.
That's the name.
Okay, so that's an R2 zone. Then we go into the R3, which is behind Taco Time, those apartments that are kind of a townhome apartment feel. And then it goes to the R4, which we see a lot more of, which is, I think, similar to probably what we would imagine an MPC, but without the commercial and some of the other requirements. But it's a lot of the zoning along Washington Boulevard and through there. So, and that has, let's see, that has 11 units per acre. So that's going to be our higher density apartments, our higher density housing projects.
Okay. Okay, any questions for staff at this point? Clarification?
Maybe I could just point out one thing when we talk about dwelling units per acre. Sometimes we get situations where people get kind of wrapped around the axle when they start talking about densities. And my experience has been that when you have an emphasis on quality of development, that sometimes those density numbers, they may look a little bit unfamiliar to us because they're not, most of us live in single family neighborhoods and we're used to 3 to 4 dwelling units per acre. And sometimes that makes some people a little bit nervous. But I can say that some of this is way before my time, but the one project, the Legacy project, I mean, that's about as nice a project as you're going to find anywhere around. And I would hope that as we investigate further, that there's still an opportunity to have more of that type of housing type and those types of developments to be not only retained, but to be encouraged in and around the city.
Okay, thanks for that comment, Rob. Committee members, number 4 is discussion about the presentations, but I'm wondering if it would be okay if we reorder the agenda and move to Dan Nixon and his presentation, because it seems to me that some of what Dan has to say is going to impact some of our discussion. If there's no objection from the committee, I'd like, or Dan, who we're kind of putting on the spot, I'd like to move to Dan and get his presentation at this point, and then move to a discussion that hopefully will include some of the things. John? Oh, John, you're muted.
I make a motion that we change the agenda as Grant just explained.
Okay, motion's been made. Second? Thanks.
Second.
I saw you wave, everybody. Okay, I guess we need to go on record, don't we? All in favor, wave at the camera or tell Lynn hi. Okay, any opposed? Okay, thank you very much. Dan, showtime.
Well, I want to, first of all, apologize for not being as prepared as the other presenters. And I appreciate their input, and especially Rob, thank you for your your last comments about density, because it's such a hot button in our city, and I'm dealing with it in my career. And I think that what I'd first like to do is just make a comment that I think that we all know and agree that the city ordinance in relationship to high density zoning needs to be updated. I think that the R2, R3, R4 zones are have been good for years and years, and they've built the fabric of our community from a multifamily standpoint. But I think that the Coldwater Creek ordinance that is part of the general plan, or not, I'm sorry, not general plan, but is part of the ordinance, is kind of an introduction to the city of what we're seeing so much across the landscape of the Wasatch Front in different communities. We're seeing developers and city come together more as partners than opponents, and cities that are progressive, that want higher design standards in their community, are allowing developers to increase their densities so that they can increase the design standards. I think that North Ogden is a little behind the scale, and I don't mean that in an insulting way. I'm a community here that I live in the community, so I'm just trying to be honest and frank. And I think I can back that statement up a little bit just by the fact that in the last 5 years, I'm just going to name the cities that I have developments going on, either in my father's business or my own business. Draper, Cottonwood Heights, Farmington, North Ogden coming up, North Logan, high density project in North Logan. And let me tell you, they're more anti-high density than any city I've ever seen in the state. And I can talk to you or answer questions about what's going on there. Hyde Park and Smithfield. So if you look at, if those of you that know Cache Valley, there's an interesting thing going on in Cache County right now because they just have even a worse housing problem that's going on here on the Wasatch Front. There's less than 100 homes on the market in the Cache Valley market. High density is a real hot button in every rural community in Cache Valley. And some cities are getting some really intense pressure to increase their densities and allow multi-units into the community. Hyde Park's a great example. They're probably more against, they don't have any apartments in their entire city. And that's the community I grew up in, which is a little farming community north of Logan. And they're starting to get progressive and starting to see that the requirements they have for affordable housing, which are state required, they're starting to get pressure from there. We've been talking about that. I don't want to get into the weeds on that. But their really biggest issue is that Smithfield has become progressive in working with developers and increasing design standards and allowing higher densities. And I want to get into clustering before I finish my presentation too. But we're seeing now these communities almost be competitive, especially for large landowners. In the situation, the development that we're involved in Hyde Park and Smithfield, I mean, it's almost 500 acres of land, and the zoning differences between Hyde Park and Smithfield are completely different. And as a developer, you really have to look at the opportunities that you have to build more quality developments based on what the city's zoning ordinances are and what the political climate is too. All of these things have to be considered. And I just feel like, Rob, your comments, I don't want to repeat what I said before, but I just hope this committee will take a look at these high density zones that I've been asked to kind of report on. And I'm just not going to go through the details of the R234 and the multi-family. I think that the presentations before were great. But there's no question that the ordinance and the code of North Ogden City compared to other communities in the state, whether that be good or bad, everybody has their own opinion, but it's definitely archaic. And I think that if we take a look at the areas of land that we want to have high density zoning, I think that we should take a really hard look at our R2, 3, 4, and the master plan community zones and come up with some really good language in the code that would create, if not force, cooperation with the city and the developer, and that design standards become a premium. And we don't worry about density as much as we worry about design standards. And I'll finish my presentation or my comments. I think I'm just rambling is what I'm doing, but clustering. Clustering is really getting popular. Smithfield has, I looked at their ordinance and I wanted to send it to all of you, but it really was more like a PUD ordinance that's very similar to what many cities have, including the PUD ordinance that North Ogden City has. But it basically is just a basic concept where you take an existing zone and you create and negotiate as a city with the developer how many units that property is going to have, which would divide up into a units per acre usage, and the developer considers his development costs and sees if the clustering type of concept works. It usually works on hillside developments where you have 30% to 20% slopes that are maybe buildable by code, but are difficult and expensive to build. And so clustering them into certain areas makes more sense. And I think from a development design standpoint, you upgrade the standards that way. And at the same time, you protect open space. So sorry that I'm not very specific, but I'll answer any questions that any of you have. I'm real busy with a lot of developments in a lot of communities right now. So I could have a lot to say if you want me to about what's going on in the Wasatch Front.
Dan, I just have a quick question on the clustering. Is clustering a little bit like legacy where you have those kind of homes all together, or are they bigger homes all put together? That's the one part I don't quite understand with clustering. Are they a certain size home, or can you do whatever? Does that make sense?
Well, yeah, clustering is, if you want to take a look at some of the nicest developments in the state of Utah, go to Holiday, where clustering is real popular. Yeah. And some of the richest people in the state live in that communities where they might be 2-acre lots, but there's also 5 acres of open space in these developments. So, okay. But they're 25,000 square foot houses. So it's probably not a very good example, but maybe a better example would be taking the hillside development that is left in North Ogden and having a developer like Randy Marriott, and I don't even know what he's proposed, so I'm totally just going off the cuff here, but you know, he could cluster some housing with some 5,000 square foot lots or 6,000, maybe 8,000 square foot lots, but he has to compensate that with open space. And those 8,000 foot lots could have 10,000 square foot, or they could have 10,000 square foot houses on them with, you know, 2 or 3 stories, and they could be a small lot, but there's all kinds of open space and trails. Yeah. And the open space and trails gets open to the community as well as not just the development.
Okay, thank you.
Other questions for Dan?
I think on the clustering, this is Eric. One way that I think a good example for us in this city, like Dan was talking about, is take, for example, the HP2 zone or HP3 zone, which has a 2-acre minimum lot size, which is essentially everything east of the Cove. And when you think about clustering, it's really how many units per acre you want to do. You kind of get away from the how many square feet per lot. And you say, okay, we would allow, say, 100-acre piece east of the Cove that's a HP3 zone would allow for 50 homes on that 100 acres. Mm-hmm. And you said, hey, we would allow that 50 homes to be clustered into a 20-acre area, and the other 80 acres is left as complete open space. Okay. And so clustering is good to think about by units per acre. So you're really taking a large piece of ground and saying that could have this many units on it we could shift those to one concentrated area of that ground and the rest is open. So you're really thinking of units per acre more so than you are square feet per lot.
Yeah, so if I can just add to that comment real quick, and sorry, I don't want to monopolize time, but this development we're working on in Hyde Park City is about 550 acres. And we're working on about 1,500 units. So if you take a look at the density of that, it's actually relatively low based on the total acreage of the development. But we are trying to cluster the developments into, non-graded areas that don't have slopes so that it's more affordable to develop, and then take the more sloped areas and put them into trail sides and trailheads and trails and open space. So density could be really, really low in these types of developments where there's large land holdings that they want to cluster in. And it makes a lot of sense because it doesn't scrape up the landscape when you're looking at it from I-15. You're looking at the North Ogden landscape and you don't see these big, large lots. Just maybe you have a lot of open space that you can view, as well as a lot of opportunities for development of the open space too.
Okay. Other questions for Dan or Eric? I have just a couple quick things I'd appreciate it if you could both address. Number one, how can you combine the concept of clustering with high density? And that's one question. The second question is, it seems like has to be a great amount of latitude in ordinance in order to allow that clustering. How does the city keep control of what's happening so that it does become a partnership with the developer rather than a pitched battle? I appreciate maybe comments from both of you on those questions.
Well, I think I already commented on the fact that I'm just seeing so much of city councils working through RDAs, and if it's a redevelopment project, I think I've commented before about Ogden City being one of the largest developers in northern Utah. They really are a huge developer as a community. Salt Lake City is a huge developer, and they partner with real developers that have the same interest in mind. If you're partnering with somebody like a city, you each together create what works for the developer and what works for the community. So I think it's really important part of what the new general plan should include.
Right. Eric, do you have anything to add to that?
Oh, well, just that, when you ask, is clustering utilized in high density? Just the one thing we got to remember as a committee, to Dan and I, high density is once you exceed probably 15 to 18 units to the acre. I know this committee and the community probably thinks high density is 5 lots to the acre. So in the development world, high density is truly 18 units plus to the acre. Anything that really beyond a townhome, when you start talking apartments and stacking units, that becomes high density. So, but yes, however the community, our community looks at it is clustering. That's exactly what helps. If you're willing to say, hey, this 5 acre piece, we would allow 25 units in it, and somebody wants to build a 24-plex building, and that takes up 10,000 square feet of the property, and the rest of it becomes open space and park. That's really, obviously you wouldn't do one building like that, but that's an idea, an extreme example that really is how it can be helped and utilized. That's how you can gain that open space. Anytime you can go vertical with units, that gives you more space on the ground to have for parks and amenities that help with the community.
Well, that gives us a lot of room for consideration as a committee, particularly with our desire to create more of a high dense downtown area, but still maintain a sense of openness with it. those, I know Lynn went down to North Salt Lake. And I thought that was a really great example on that little field trip of community leaders and private developers coming together to create something that was, I thought, pretty impressive. I don't know, Lynn, what were your impressions of that as you walked through it?
I really liked it. It felt nice and clean and new, and there was a vibe to it. I liked it.
They had some open space built into it. It was there, you know, it was really pretty nice.
Yeah, the park was right there. There was commercial, there were restaurants.
Yep.
I really liked it.
Yeah, very good.
Grant, I have another comment for you.
Sure.
And that is getting on the opportunity to talk about clustering. One of the things that people don't talk about very often is that it's actually more economical for the city to be able to provide services for clustered development. So you don't end up with as many miles of roads, all the other infrastructure as far as water lines, sewer lines, et cetera. And so there's a real benefit as we think about the future of the city, and things do wear out. It's nice to be able to have development activity that lessens the potential liability for future repairs, et cetera, those kinds of things.
Rob,
And
don't forget soft infrastructure.
And more affordable housing.
Right.
You tell me what the definition of affordable is, Dan. I've always been after that.
Oh,
what's affordable?
It can be. It has 10 definitions in different levels of price.
I think the best.
I'm saying, like, but it's a great point, and I think we should bring it up since we're focusing on clustering.
Right.
You can cluster as a custom home developer if you're up on the hillside, and you can have $120,000 lot instead of a $500,000 lot if you use clustering. So it does create more affordable housing. Now, is it affordable? No, but is it $125,000 lot instead of a $500,000 lot?
I'm with you. So it's only 1.6 million instead of 2. Got
it. there you go.
Well, I guess my personal definition of affordable or moderate income housing is a place where our city employees can live based on the salaries we pay them. And to me, there ought to be some places in our community where our police officers and other employees can reside in the community that they serve. But that's just a bias. Okay, let's move into discussion now about what our next steps are and how we combine all this information together. I think that we've had some really great presentations and appreciate the homework that everyone has done and the input that's been provided. It seems to me that we need to talk about next steps now, and we need to also make a firm decision about whether or not the concept we've talked about really having a downtown area is a viable concept for North Ogden, given size, location, so on and so forth. Let's open it up for discussion now on regarding residential zoning standards, which at this point includes multi-use zones and cluster developments. Steph.
Okay. I just in moving forward, I talked to John a little bit because the last meeting I kind of got confused, and I wanted to make sure that we were still moving forward and making decisions that will lead us to the ultimate goal of what the city council needs from us to vest the general plan or the zoning map. And so with these presentations and kind of understanding residential zones, high density, the amount of housing, units per acre, I think what we should do is look at the map that we've laid out and go through and, and I guess I would need to get with Grant and we could discuss how to present this and get it to you guys, get it to the committee so it's easier to read. But we need to start breaking it down into exactly how many units per acre we see in spots of land so that we can narrow that down. And we can do that using the zones that we were presented today, or just simply by how many units per acre we see. Because I believe if we can get that, we can present that to the city council, because when it comes to zoning, setbacks and all of that, that's going to fall under planning commission. And so while now we understand them better and exactly what the zones mean, let's implement them into our map that we've already laid out and worked out.
Okay.
If everybody thinks that's a good step to move forward to, because that would,
Okay.
And Stephanie, I'm sorry, Grant, but
Yeah.
I think Stephanie's right on. We're getting a lot of requests for rezoning.
Yeah.
And our initial response has been, we're waiting for the submission of the zoning from the general plan committee before we get overly excited about rezoning anything. So I would hope we can concentrate on getting that so that we can move forward in the city.
But thanks, Neil. I think that's good counsel. We want to give Ryan some ammunition so that he's doing more than just sitting there saying, wait. Okay. Dan, the clustering concept I find really appealing. I don't know how many others on the committee do, but I find that really appealing, and we don't have anything in our current ordinance that facilitates that, do we? Our current zoning ordinances and so on.
I'd defer to Rob. I think that the planned unit development ordinance has opportunities there.
Okay.
Yeah, the PUD ordinance, planned unit development, and the group dwelling ordinance allow for it, but not in the way as providing additional flexibility that I'm familiar with cluster ordinances. It's an ordinance that I firmly believe the city would really benefit from.
Dan, can you get us a copy of the Smithfield Ordinance? That seems to be one you think is quite workable.
Yeah, it's actually their PUD. It's called a PUD overlay. And so the more I got into it, it just looked like it was really beefy. It had a lot going, and I didn't think that it was maybe as relevant. But if you just go to Smithfield City's website and go to their PUD overlay ordinance, there's some really good language in there that I think it would interest all of you. You guys know Jake Young. He's been involved. He's on retainer with our company, and he's the one who recommended Smithfield. He's doing some stuff there, and we're actually being solicited by Smithfield to move our property out of Hyde Park into Smithfield. So it's almost like a reverse, where cities are recruiting developers. It's kind of bizarre. I've never seen it in my career, but it's starting to happen because some cities are kind of seeing the opportunities for higher quality developments, and other cities they're just not moving. They just don't want to go off of those half-acre lots, and they don't know anything different, and they're just being stubborn. And it's okay. There's nothing wrong with stubbornness. Communities want to be what they want to be, so everybody's got to, we as a committee have to kind of come together and decide what we want to do.
Agreed. And the bottom line is, as long as people in Utah continue to have the number of children we have, we got to find a place to house them and make it affordable, to our children as they're starting out. So I'm quite intrigued with the whole concept, because it seems to me maybe the best way to get a handle on having things happen the way you want them to happen as a community is the partnership approach that you're talking about, that we saw demonstrated in North Salt Lake. What does the committee think, and how shall we move forward on this? Go ahead, Steph.
I like the clustering as well, and I think that's worth exploring. I think that is possibly something that would fit really well up in what we've marked out as the conservation area.
Yep.
I think that would fit really well up there.
Mhm.
I wonder if, since the residential zoning is fresh on our minds, that next meeting we plan to cover the map of residential area into downtown and break that down. And I think if we go dwelling units per acre, we kind of, I'm trying to think of what's the easiest to imagine it. I don't know that we need to do the zoning. I think we need to be, because I think if the council can look at it and, a section's marked out as, a certain amount of dwellings per acre, they can then make sure that the zoning being requested fits into what we've said we think fits.
I would agree with that.
And then I almost say maybe we all do our own little homework on clustering, and we discuss clustering again, and then move on to, I imagine that'll take the next meeting, but once we can get the residential done, we can start exploring a whole new idea.
Let me make a suggestion, and go ahead.
I was just going to say real quick, if you research zoning ordinances and stuff, you'll see a real hot buzzword called bonus density. And a lot of cities use bonus density to increase their design standards. And I think that I like the language of bonus density in that developers are rewarded with higher densities if they increase design standards and quality projects, open space, access to their land with communities, etc.
Super. Okay, let me advance a proposal. I don't know if we have a quorum so we can even pass a motion, but I suggest that Steph and I get together, and based on the input that we've had, she and I try to assign the zoning based on the outlines of what the committee's preferences have been to this point. That's one part of it. Simultaneously, I don't see any reason to hold off till another committee meeting, because if we'd have permission of the committee to, for her and I to examine both of those concepts, the clustering concept as well as the bonus density concept, and maybe come in with some suggestions for the committee to discuss at the next meeting that combine all those elements. Steph, now that's my suggestion. Of course, you'll have to do most of the work on it, because no, I'll be happy to do my part, but I'd suggest that as a direction, because let's start to nail this stuff down, and to nail it down, we need to have specifics to react to. And I think we need to, Steph and I can bring to the committee something that reflects the sense of what the committee has projected in the outlines and so on that we've gone through, tie that directly to zoning, and then integrate into it the concept of the bonus bonus density for, in return for higher design standards and clustering. And if it's okay with the committee, I think we'd be willing to take that on, wouldn't we, Steph?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I would love to break down the map and make it so that when we sit down, we know exactly what sections we're talking about, what we're doing, and we can go through all of the things we've been discussing, the residential zoning. I think I know that I've learned a lot, and I have a better understanding of all of these zones, of densities, of options, and it's going to be much clearer and quicker to go through a map now and be able to identify what we want them to look like.
Right.
I'm not so confused.
Having visited, just to give the committee a little bit of comfort, my in-laws live in Chicago, and the Arlington Park area, which is just north of the airport in Chicago O'Hare Airport, they have implemented a number of these kinds of designs. And my brother-in-law lives in quite a high density location, but man, it's really nice. It is really nice. And I think our community would love to have something like that. And so I guess I'd never really pictured that as a possibility in our area, but golly, let's put our heads together. If there's no,
yeah, I think there's lots of options.
Go ahead, Julie.
I just
Can't hear you, Julie.
I have been looking. I actually pulled up the PUD that Dan has been talking about, and it is quite interesting. They actually specify in their codes how much is based as open space, depending on the zone that you're building in. You know, like what zone in what area, and it talks about the PUD with like you use those kind of open spaces in the PUD where there's natural features, which is not buildable, slopes, ridge lines, wetlands, streams, or creek corridors. It is really quite interesting. And I think it's something that if we can kind of look into, I think would work up on the hill.
Yep. Nope.
So I just wanted you to know that I did look into that. And actually they actually specify if you're doing it in an R110 area, let's say, they actually put PUD in it so that people know R110, but it is also what is a planned unit development. Okay. So in other words, these people can go in and know that there's going to be open space in there. So I would like to keep lots of open space. But realistically, in the day that we live in and the people that are moving here and will continue to move here,
right?
I think we need to make sure that we preserve as much as we can as you two go about doing what, and I know you two will do a great job on that. So thank you.
Great. Well, Julie, we'll certainly invite you to our meetings. That's for sure. Could you send the references that you've looked up on that? And then also if we could ask Rob maybe to give us some additional references. We can look up the Smithfield things and take what Julie has given us, and then we'll try to integrate that in the report. Okay, I saw a hand, Steph. Was it your hand waving?
No, I'm good. I got it. You guys got talking, and I think it either left my mind or you answered it. But keep going.
Grant? Hey, Grant, if I can just quickly point out that one of the nicest planned unit developments in the state of Utah is Lakeview Heights in North Ogden City. So take a look at Lakeview Heights. That's not a bad PUD. And that was developed, 35 years ago? 30?
Yeah. They have a nice little walkway down the watershed, and it's very good. Rob, you had a comment?
I would volunteer to help write some generalized statements associated with your general plan map that you've made together to maybe help you out.
Okay, thank you. That would be really
that would be helpful.
Now, next question, Rob and Steph, have you both had your COVID shots yet?
I have. I get my second one on April 5th, but I am 2 weeks past my first, so I'm 80% protected.
Good. Okay, Rob.
I've had both of mine, and my 2 weeks will be a week next Tuesday.
Yeah, that means we can actually get together. That's exciting. This electronic stuff irritates me sometimes, especially when I can't make it work like tonight. Okay.
I like it. You should see how comfortable I really am.
Okay, we'll just leave that to our imagination, Steph. Thank you.
No, don't do that. I'm just in sweats. I would just never wear those.
Okay,
that's all.
Okay, that's good. Very good. Okay, I think I hear no objection from the committee, so we'll head in that direction if that's okay. And I'm pretty excited, Dan and Eric. I think you've maybe helped us have a paradigm shift that has opened our minds a little bit, and I'm pretty excited about it. So thank you for your input this evening. Next element up, we have committee, staff, or mayor comments. If there's no further, is there any further discussion on the items we
Not on that. I just have a comment.
comment? Go ahead.
I just have a general comment, not about that. So I just want to make sure we're moved on. I didn't mean to jump the gun there with.
Nope.
I just have a comment.
Yeah, I don't hear anyone speaking about need for additional discussion on items 4 or 5 on the agenda. So go ahead, Steph.
Okay. I just wanted to comment and let everyone know that I know that while we've been talking about the conservation area, that we're all very concerned about, you know, preserving certain areas of North Ogden. We've got some really beautiful space, beautiful natural area. And at the planning commissions, Rob has been working on the sensitive lands ordinance. And I think that's something that we should all look at and be aware of as he's working on that.
Mhm.
And I appreciate him being here because I know that he's retired, and I know that that's one of the last things he's gonna follow through for us, which I appreciate.
Mhm.
I do also want to let everyone know that at that meeting, I was surprised to hear representatives from Marriott comment about the sensitive lands ordinance and some concerns they may have in how it would affect their plans in development. So just something that, you know, as we're concerned about that, it's something we should all be aware of and pay attention to.
Thanks, Steph.
So-
I appreciate that insight. My sense is that given the flexibility of some of the things we've talked about tonight, Marriott people may be willing to have a paradigm shift also. So these are exciting concepts, and if we can partner with them rather than making an oppositional thing, that would be highly desired. Okay, number 6, we've had some committee comments already. Any additional staff or mayor or committee comments? Other than Neil's told us to get our act together and get moving, so we will. Okay, seeing no further discussion, we'll accept a motion for adjournment. All in favor of adjourning, say aye. Or raise your hand, pardon me, we all have to, yeah. Anyone opposed? Okay, it's great. We'll see you all in about a month, and I'm looking forward to having all the homework done on this and some real solid things we can talk about and nail down and move this process forward. Thanks to all of you for your input and homework tonight. Good evening.